Welcome to Short Movie Channel. Our movie today begins with two detectives from the FBI, Harland and Fletcher. They are joined by the rest of the team and the police, monitoring a location where they have confirmed information about a gang planning a heist and robbery at a jewelry store. Using their surveillance devices, they listen in on the gang members' conversations, but the voices aren't clear enough. The movie introduces our main character, Will, who is accompanied by Vincent and Riley. They're waiting for a call from their fourth partner, Haight, who is supposed to inform them once he disables the bank's alarm system, surveillance cameras, and recording devices. After a short while, Haight calls to confirm that he has successfully deactivated all security systems as planned. Will and Vincent head to a toy store, which they'll use as an entry point to the bank, while Riley picks up Will in her car. The movie reveals that the detectives and federal agents are closely monitoring every move the gang makes. Will and Vincent manage to enter the store and break through the wall separating it from the bank. They successfully get inside the bank, open the vault, and steal $10 million. Despite the presence of numerous gold bars, they leave them behind because of their heavy weight and lack of time. They also don't have enough bags to carry them. Will decides they'll take the cash only, and they quickly exit the bank. Meanwhile, Harland, Fletcher, and the task force storm the jewelry store, only to realize they'd been tricked. Will and Vincent had robbed the bank next door. The scene shifts back to Will and Vincent as they escape through the bank's back door with the bag of cash. During their escape, a man spots them. Vincent wants to shoot him, but Will stops him. Unfortunately, a shot is accidentally fired, hitting Vincent. Riley and Haight arrive to help. They carry Vincent to the car while Will goes back to retrieve the cash bag lying in the street. The police arrive, but Haight speeds off with Riley and Vincent. Will grabs the cash bag, shoots two officers, and escapes in their car. A high-speed chase ensues, with police cars pursuing Will, who eventually enters a warehouse. The police surround the building. Inside, Will empties the cash into a burning barrel, destroying the evidence. He walks out with his hands raised and surrenders to the police. Harland is furious to find the money gone and the bag empty. Will spends 8 years in prison and is released after completing his sentence. The movie reveals that Will has a daughter named Allison. After his release, he buys her a teddy bear as a gift. On his way to see her, he encounters Harland and Fletcher, who offer him a ride. Will agrees and asks them to drop him off at his ex-wife's house, where his daughter lives. During the ride, Fletcher makes a remark, implying that Will is now set to live a wealthy life with the $10 million they believe he has hidden. Will tells them the truth, that he burned all the money the night he was arrested, but neither Harland nor Fletcher believes him. When they arrive at his ex-wife's house, Will thanks them for the ride and gets out of the car. Allison opens the door and learns that he was just released from prison. Will finds out from her that her mother, his ex-wife, is living out of town with her husband, leaving Allison alone in the house. Allison hands Will a yellow envelope, telling him that someone gave it to her earlier that day and instructed her to give it to him once he was out of prison. Will takes his daughter Allison to a cafe. He's extremely nervous, holding a piece of paper where he had written down some words he wanted to say to her. He tries to ask for her forgiveness for what he did in the past and for being distant from her for so long. He also gives her the teddy bear he bought earlier. However, Allison gets upset, leaves the cafe, takes a taxi, and drives away, leaving Will standing in the middle of the street, shocked. Afterward, Will goes to meet Riley at her workplace. She's very happy to see him out of prison. They sit and talk for a while, catching up. During their conversation, Riley tells him that Vincent was found murdered, with his body dumped on the side of the road. The police couldn't figure out who was responsible. Suddenly, Will hears a phone ringing. He realizes it's coming from the yellow envelope he's carrying. Inside, he finds a phone. When he answers, he's shocked to hear Vincent on the other end of the line. Will is overjoyed to hear Vincent's voice, but Vincent explains that his life fell apart after Will went to prison. He demands his share of the money. Will tells him there's no money because he burned it all the night he was arrested. Vincent becomes furious, sharing how he's been struggling, losing his leg due to gambling debts and now working as a taxi driver. He reveals he has Allison with him and threatens to hurt her if Will doesn't give him his share of the money. Desperate, Will lies and tells Vincent the money is in Alabama. Vincent gives him 12 hours to deliver his share, warning that he knows what he'll do if he doesn't comply. Meanwhile, Will notices detectives Harland and Fletcher watching him. He quickly puts on a mask, disappears into a crowd, and evades them. He buys a new phone, places the old one on a train headed to Alabama, and activates call forwarding so that any calls to the old phone will redirect to his new one. This way, Vincent would believe Will is traveling to Alabama. Will then goes directly to Detective Harland and explains everything in detail, but Harland doesn't believe him. He insists that Vincent is dead and even shows him the case file. Will learns that the burned and mutilated body the police found had 3 severed fingers that matched Vincent's DNA. Despite this, Will tries to convince Harland that Vincent is still alive, but Harland becomes angry and orders him out of his office. In the elevator, Will fights the guards, knocks them out, and steals their IDs. He uses them to access the file and investigation room. On a computer, he searches for the address of Hoyt, their 4th accomplice, and finds it. It's revealed that Vincent and Hoyt are working together to kidnap Allison. Hoyt tracks Will's phone and believes he's currently on the train to Alabama. Meanwhile, Vincent waits in his taxi, where he has Allison locked in the trunk. A passenger tries to hail Vincent's taxi, but Vincent initially refuses. When the passenger threatens to call the police, Vincent reluctantly agrees to give him a ride. During the ride, Allison manages to create a small opening between the trunk and the back seat, hoping to signal the passenger. However, Vincent notices, stops the car, gets out, and beats the passenger. He then forces the passenger out of the taxi. Detective Harland continues to track Will's actions, reviewing surveillance footage. Through the recordings, he discovers that Will entered the file and investigation room, searching through the records until he found Hoyt's address. Harland immediately orders the forces to move to Hoyt's location before Will gets there. Meanwhile, Will arrives at Hoyt's house, pulls a gun on him, and demands to know Vincent's location, explaining that Vincent has kidnapped his only daughter, Allison. Hoyt tries to lie and manipulate Will, saying, "What's wrong with you, Vincent? He's dead and gone." But Will doesn't buy it. He hits Hoyt and threatens to kill him. Left with no choice, Hoyt confesses that Vincent indeed kidnapped Allison and put her in the trunk of the taxi he's currently driving. Suddenly, Will hears police cars approaching the house. As he looks out the window, Hoyt takes advantage of the distraction and attacks Will. A fierce fight breaks out between them. Will hides behind a chair as Hoyt grabs a rifle and starts shooting, intending to kill him. At the same time, the police storm the apartment and shoot Hoyt, killing him instantly. Will, however, jumps out the window and escapes into the street. As he runs, a passing taxi lightly hits him. This reminds him that Vincent kidnapped his daughter using a taxi. Will quickly stops another taxi, gets in, and threatens the driver with his gun. Meanwhile, Vincent is pulled over by a police officer because of a broken taillight. The officer hears faint sounds coming from the trunk of the car and asks Vincent to open it. Vincent complies but suddenly shoots the officer, killing him. Allison uses the moment to escape, running away as fast as she can. Unfortunately, she finds herself trapped in a dead end. Vincent catches her again, looks at her fingers, and mockingly says, "I sacrificed my fingers, cut them off, and placed them next to the second body so everyone would believe I'm dead." He then picks her up and puts her back in the trunk. Back with Will, he forces the taxi driver to call the company and ask about a taxi driven by a man missing fingers and a leg. Will successfully gets the taxi's number and current location. He forces the driver out of the car and takes over the wheel himself. At the same time, Detective Harland searches Hoyt's apartment and uncovers Vincent's address. This confirms that Vincent had been fooling everyone for years and that Will was telling the truth all along. Harland then receives a report that Will has stolen a taxi, is armed, and is currently in the middle of the city near the celebrations. The report also states that Will was asking about a taxi driver missing fingers and a leg. Will finally reaches Vincent's location and spots a taxi with Vincent's license plate number. However, it turns out to be the wrong car because Vincent had swapped the plates and placed the GPS tracker in another taxi's trunk. Once again, Vincent is one step ahead, always staying just out of reach. Suddenly, 2 police officers arrive and arrest Will on charges of assaulting 2 FBI agents and for sneaking into the records and investigation room. They take him in their car, but midway through the trip, Will attacks them. A crash happens, and the car flips over after hitting the curb. Luckily, no one is killed. Will escapes from the car and calls Vincent. On the phone, Vincent tells him, "I've been patient with you, buddy. You've got just 3 hours to bring me my share of the money, or I'll end your daughter's life and leave you to pick up her corpse from the morgue." Will is torn, not knowing what to do. He calls Riley, explains everything that's happened, and says, "I've got no choice but to rob the bank we hit 8 years ago. That bank has tons of gold bars worth way more than the cash we took in the last job." Riley reluctantly agrees to help him, only to save his daughter, despite having left the life of crime long ago. They start preparing the tools for the heist. The plan is to access the bank from underground sewage tunnels. They use intense heat to melt through the bank floor. It works, creating a direct opening into the vault containing the gold bars. The extreme heat melts some of the gold, causing it to drip through the hole and land below. It solidifies when it touches the sewer water, and they quickly pack it into their bags. But things take a turn. The intense heat triggers the bank's fire alarm. A fire alert is sent out, and detectives Harland and Fletcher are shocked to learn it's the same bank Will robbed 8 years ago. They rush to the scene, and the police surround the bank. Inside, the vault is almost completely destroyed by fire, and much of the gold is gone. One of the officers reports spotting a speeding red car. Harland orders the police to chase it immediately. After a high-speed chase, they cut the car off and stop it. But to their surprise, Riley is driving, and she's not carrying any gold or evidence. The story flashes back to reveal that Will had taken the gold-filled bags and switched cars. He then contacts Vincent, saying, "I've got the money. Let's meet at the old amusement park we used to go to." Using Vincent's taxi records, Harland discovers the location Vincent had visited the most in the past 2 weeks, an abandoned amusement park. The police head there right away. Meanwhile, Will arrives at the amusement park and confronts Vincent. This time, their meeting is completely different. They're not friends or partners anymore but enemies. Will hands Vincent the bag of gold and demands that he release his daughter, Allison, who is locked in the trunk of a car. But Vincent betrays him. He pours gasoline all over and tries to ignite it with a flare. Will tackles him, but Vincent shoots him in the stomach. Despite the injury, Will fights back, and the flare accidentally falls onto the gasoline, igniting the car in flames. In the chaos, Will manages to overpower Vincent, and the fire engulfs him. Will rushes to the car, drives it into the water, and struggles to open the trunk before it sinks completely. Suddenly, Vincent appears again, choking Will. In a desperate move, Will grabs a metal tool, opens the trunk, and rescues Allison. When Vincent attacks again, Will fights back and finishes him off. Will climbs out of the water, severely injured from the gunshot wound, and collapses as Allison holds him, crying and devastated. The detectives arrive, and Allison pleads with them not to arrest her father. Harland assures her, "We don't have any evidence against him for robbing the bank." He even promises to testify in Will's favor, saying Vincent was the real thief who stole the gold. Will is airlifted to the hospital, where he undergoes surgery and survives. After some time, he's discharged, and we see him with Allison and Riley at the beach. There, he notices a piece of gold left in Riley's red car, the one they used for the heist. Realizing detectives are still watching him from afar, he pretends to throw the gold into the water. In reality, he throws a piece of pineapple instead, planning to retrieve the gold later once the police lose interest. And with that, our movie comes to an end. I hope you enjoyed the story. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with your friends.